Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for the week of June 2nd to the 8th, which was the Queer Lit Readathon. This week I read 10 books, I watched 2 shows, I listened to 2 podcasts, and I listened to 1 book. It's just too many things for a week, guys. It's so many things. Firstly, thank you so much to everyone who participated in the Queer Lit Readathon. I really had a great time. I'm just a little bit overwhelmed that I now have to talk about 11 books in a weekly wrap-up. I remember when I started doing weekly wrap-ups and I was like, well, I better talk about everything I watch as well, because what if one week I don't finish a book? First this week I finished If I'm Being Honest. I only had about 50 pages of this left on Sunday morning, but I just didn't quite finish it the week before, so there we go. This book is about a girl who has parents that aren't exactly there for her, and she puts a lot of pressure on herself to gain their acceptance and love. And because of that pressure, she doesn't seem to realize how stressed out she is. So when somebody interrupts her plans to seduce this boy one day, she says something quite mean to that person, and then the boy thinks that she is a bitch. Using the framing of Taming of the Shrew, which is what they're studying in English at that point, she then decides that she's going to make herself better so that the boy will end up liking her. That sounds a little bit shallow and vapid, but as the plot develops, she realizes that she's doing these things for herself, not necessarily for a boy, and is that boy even worth it? And all of these things come into question. This not only ends up being about friendship, it also has so many little Easter eggs of nerdy things that I just really adored. It had a Dr. Horrible reference, it had a Battlestar Galactica reference, it has huge references to Rocky Horror Picture Show. And I love that a bunch of these were framed in ways where the main character didn't know what was going on because she's not part of those nerdy worlds, but if you're a nerd reading this book, yes, you knew what was going on and it was delightful. Getting into the books I read for the Queer Lit Readathon, the first one was La Bastarda. This is a translated novel from Spanish about a woman living in West Africa. It's classified as my historical fiction in so much as it was set 15 years ago. My main thing with this one is it could have been longer, it could have been expanded. I didn't really have enough time with these characters to really care what was happening besides the fact that the society treats women very, very poorly. After that I read A Taste of Honey. This is a sci-fi fantasy male-male romance. And this one is also very short, so it's a little hard to give it a synopsis without ruining the twist that you get at the end. With that in mind, the biggest thing to know about this one is it is non-linear, so it will jump back and forth between this about 14-day period and then later in the main character's life. So just know that going in, it will make sense by the end. After that, I finally read Ivy Aberdeen's Letter to the World. This one is adorable, which is kind of a weird and messed up thing to say as the first thing I say about this book where a girl's house is taken away by a tornado. Fortunately, Ivy and her family are fine, just a couple of scrapes and bruises, but they are in this very upsetting circumstance where their house is now gone and they have to live in a hotel room, all 5 of them together. Nope, pardon me, 6. There's 2 parents, 2 sisters, and then twin little boys as well who are like 3 months old, all in one hotel room. Because of the addition of the twins to the family, Ivy's kind of the middle child now and doesn't really feel like she fits in with her family anymore, so that's stressful. Also, she has all of these drawings she's made of girls holding hands and they disappeared in the tornado and now are showing up in her locker at school. So she's trying to figure out her sexuality, what that means, who she can talk to about it. This person obviously knows because they're trading back and forth notes and just won't tell her who they are. It's a very stressful time, but it's also super adorable, and I almost cried at the end with just how it resolved and how she was going to continue on with her life, and it was great, and I want to read Everything Ever by Ashley Herring Blake. After that I took a quick detour to a book that was not on my TBR, and that's The Sleeper and the Spindle by Neil Gaiman with illustrations by Chris Riddell, which were beautiful. I picked this up because I went into the librarian's office and was like, so anyone here know about Good Omens? Because I really want to talk about the show with people in person, and then it ended up that I recommended them the show, and then I told them about the readathon I was hosting right then, and they told me about books that they liked, and then also I knew that there was a queer moment in this book, and that's exactly what it is. It's not a queer book, just 2 girls happen to kiss at one point, which is a beautiful spread, but it doesn't make it a queer book. In any case, it's really, really short, and the librarian took it off their shelf, handed it to me, and I read it over my lunch break and returned it. This is a retelling of Sleeping Beauty and Snow White kind of mixed together, and the librarian that handed it to me actually did like a thesis on this book, which is why she handed it to me. She didn't hand it to me because she was like, oh, this is queer, you'll like it. She was like, oh no, you will like this because I like this. I thought it was a really interesting story and I kind of want to read your thesis on it. After that, I read Soar, Adam Soar. This is a trans memoir written mostly by his father, but also is interspersed with Facebook updates from Adam himself. Adam was a trans boy living with epilepsy in Ontario. Unfortunately, a couple of years ago, passed away. And I knew that going into the book, but then I spent a lot of the book crying about him dying and what happened after he died and the circumstances of his death. I was not fully prepared for the fact that the selfie on the cover of this book was taken moments before Adam died. So yeah, just know that going in. This book wasn't perfect, Adam's dad wasn't perfect, but he loved his son so much. And I'm getting emotional just thinking about it, so if you want a book that's going to make you cry, Soar, Adam, Soar is the one for you. Because there was no way I could read that book in my bathtub given how Adam died, I switched over to The Seafarer's Kiss for my Wednesday tradition. This book is about a bisexual outcast mermaid who makes a deal with Loki, the trickster god. It is a Little Mermaid retelling. It's got quite a twist to it, which I really appreciated, and now that I know that there is a companion/sequel novel, I really want to read it. I devoured the writing in this, and I found that the author was really good at giving you little clues as to what was going on, and then seeing them come together was beautiful. I loved how this played with Norse myths. I loved how this went in a completely different direction than I thought it was going to go, and I just absolutely adored it. After that, I read the group book, which was We Set the Dark on Fire. This is definitely the start of a series. I think I knew that going in, but having it confirmed by the end of the book, just kind of cutting off in a semi-cliffhanger location, was just... I need the rest of the series now, please. This book is set on an island where the elite sons marry two wives, a primera and a segunda. The primeras are the logical wives, the ones that they can talk statistics and logistics with, whereas the segundas are the wives that have the children and bring them up. Our main character has been training for 5 years to be a primera, although she shouldn't technically be in that school because she's technically from the other side of the border. So when she's contacted by a rebel group who basically says, hey, if you don't help us out, we're going to let them know that you are illegal, she kind of has to become a spy. I found this one was very fast-paced. I didn't want to put it down. It obviously had things to say about immigration, but then it also had things to say about sexual desire. It is not very often that you see a female masturbation scene in a book, and I was so happy to see that. And all in all, I just really need the rest of the series to come out immediately, which is obviously not going to happen because this book just came out a couple of months ago. Apologies if you can hear seaplanes in the background. I am much closer to the harbor at this location, so you get all sorts of weird noises here. Next, because I wanted to finish the bingo board as soon as possible, I read the Backstagers Volume 3, which is just a very short graphic novel basically wrapping up what happened to the boys around the time of Halloween as well as around the time of Valentine's Day. So instead of being one big arc, these were little shorts, and I missed these boys so much. They are so adorable. I could honestly read 100 issues of just shorts of these boys being freaking adorable and not get tired of it. The Backstagers is about a crew of boys who work the backstage of this theater department at an all-boys high school, and there is a fantasy element to it because very strange things happen there. If you've ever read the Lumberjanes, this is like the dude version of the Lumberjanes set inside, and it's amazing. Then I thought I was going to bed, but instead I started reading Bloom and got more than halfway through it, and then it was past my bedtime and I had to go to sleep. This book is about Ari. His parents own a Greek bakery and his sister just got married, so she is moving away, so a lot more responsibility is put on his shoulders at the bakery, but he wants to move out and be in his band and go to a big city and make it big. He posts a help wanted ad to get somebody to try to replace him, and then meets Hector, who is in town because his grandmother used to live there but recently died, so he is clearing out her house. As you might guess, romance ensues, but this book has such beautiful spreads in it. I really adored each of the spreads where it was a 2-page spread and it was just people doing something together, usually bakery related, so now I just want all of the spanakopita. And I ended up getting up the next morning before my alarm went off and finishing this book before I even had to get up for work. I could not recommend it more. It was just so adorable and pure, and I loved it, and I loved the character growth, and it was just so good. Read it. On to the shows I watched this week. I watched a few episodes of the 20th season of Survivor, which is the heroes versus villains. For some reason, Russell is still there, and we're at the top 5, so if he wins this season, I'm just gonna be so angry because that dude. I also watched the last episode of the 3rd season of Better Call Saul. Didn't realize it was going to be the last episode until Netflix was just like, hey, watch a different show now. And I was like, I guess that is the season finale. Darn. What I really like about Jimmy as a character is, yeah, he does some despicable things, but usually he's doing them for good reasons, and when he realizes that he's done them for terrible reasons, he goes back on it and does despicable things to fix the previous despicable things, if that makes any sense. Basically, he really does have a heart and he tries to fix his problems, and you see a lot of that in this episode. On to the podcasts I listened to. I listened to an episode of 99% Invisible, which my friend Rena sent me, and this one was Palaces for the People. This was all about libraries and social infrastructure, and I found it really fascinating. I've now put the book that the podcast was based on hold at my library, and I just really enjoyed listening to this episode, especially at this point where people were talking about creating resilience centers, and it being a beautiful building that is very welcoming and very opening and housed with staff that is aggressively helpful and just there to help you with whatever you need, and it will have programs for children and then also Wi-Fi for adults and computers that anybody can use and different things that people can have access to. And then the person's just like, so you're describing a library. And I think you guys know that I work at a library and I love libraries, but when you're working at a library day to day, and especially if things aren't going the exact way that you would like your career to go, let's just go with that as what I'm going to say, you can get bogged down in the day-to-day things and then forget about the bigger picture of why you love the institution so much. And this just really brought me right back to why I love libraries and why I always want to work at a library and what I want to do for my community. While I was exporting my Queer Lit Readathon vlog, which I will obviously link down below, I also listened to the 70th episode of Snark Squad Pod. I have been meaning to listen to this podcast, but as soon as I realized that audiobooks from the library for free were a thing, I kind of stopped listening to podcasts. But Mari uploaded this one to her YouTube channel, so I just played this in the background while I was waiting for my video to export, and it was about Daisy Jones and the Six, which is a book that I really adored, and I really enjoyed listening to everyone's discussion about it. Listening to this episode also just made me that much more excited that BookNet Fest is less than 90 days away now, and it feels like it's been years since I was at the last one, so I'm just really looking forward to it. Finally, the book I listened to this week was Every Day by David Levithan. My friend Amara has been recommending this book to me for ages, and it's been on my radar. I just hadn't gotten around to it, but it was finally available at my library, so I picked it up, or more accurately, downloaded it. This book is about A, and what is interesting about A is they wake up in a different body every single day. This has always been the case. They fall asleep in one body, and the next day they are in a different body, somewhere within a certain geographical location, and always in the body of somebody who is their age. It tends to be that they just try not to disrupt this person's day too much, but obviously they have control of the body and can do things if they want to. And as we start out this tale, they end up falling in love with the girlfriend of the body they are currently in. This was a very intriguing premise, and I found out that it's also been recently adapted into a movie, so I'd love to see the movie version, because seeing all of the different characters that have to play A, and seeing if they can capture a way that you can really tell that it is the same person every time, that's going to be an acting challenge that I am interested to see on screen. This book did try to bring in different representation as well. For example, sometimes A is in the body of a trans person, and although the way that A talks about that person is generally okay, the way that their love interest talks about that person isn't great. It was also not my favorite thing in the world that their love interest kind of decides that maybe they shouldn't be together after A is in the body of somebody who is obese. This book really did try to talk about people's prejudice based on what people look like, which I appreciated. It just wasn't always perfect for me. Not that I'm always looking for perfection, and if something isn't perfect, it's not representation, but I mostly just want you to know that going in. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!